Hello, welcome to another session with Just the Facts. We have one of those rare opportunities to get a very special guest in. I would like to introduce you to Mr. Joe Overby, the editor-in-chief of Automotive Remarketing Magazine and Cherokee Media Group. Did I say that right?
You did. You spot on.
This has been a long time in trying to get together. Joe's a busy man. We just tend to be traveling a lot, so it's great to get him here in studio. We just happen to be in for NIADA.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I love the studio. I love the just the atmosphere at NIADA. It's been a good convention so far, and it's nice to come here and do a podcast in a cool studio with you.
Yeah, I get to return the favor. I had done one of your podcasts earlier, right, as part of Used Car Week. I wanted to ask you, just in your observation, there's a lot going on, right? Every year seems to be a little crazier than the last. It's starting to settle down a little bit. Are there one or two things that stood out to you at this year's convention? You know, again, it's NIADA. Are there one or two things you picked up on? I know you visit a lot of people.
Absolutely. So it came up in several different panel discussions, and also some of the podcasts that I've been recording with some of the folks on site, is just the inventory management. How are dealers, independent dealers, going to find used cars, and what are some of the resources they're turning to? And one of the well-sourced or well-utilized avenues of finding inventory is getting those consumer cars, which so many people don't think of, as consumer as the seller of the car, but it's really, especially if it's one of a dealer's own customers, the history of the car, what that customer has, how long they've driven it, et cetera. So it's an avenue I think a lot of dealers now turning to, because a lot of the commercial consignment, off lease, off rentals, some of those have dried up, and it's just hard to get those cars. So
yeah, for sure,
dealers are turning to their own customer base and using data and other resources and kind of some cool techniques to get that inventory.
That's one of the things that was a cause and effect of COVID, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of those very same dealers weren't very good at it prior to COVID, right? But now it's a necessity.
Yeah.
So a lot of dealers have gotten a lot better. Some still struggle. Some are doing very well, right? That's how it always works. Pulling them out of your own service department, if you're a franchise dealer, right? If you have the luxury of a service department, that's always good, because to your point, you have the history and the service history, which leads me to another question I wanted to get your feedback on. With today's online marketing, everything that used to be in that proverbial Foursquare at a dealership is now given to the customer online, right? They're all priced to market for the most part. A customer can find out what their trade's worth from 10 different sources today, right? They can do an online credit app. They can find their interest rate. They can find their payment. They can find their down payment. All that stuff used to be the conversation at the dealership. Well, now that that's done online, that conversation at the dealership has changed, right? And the feedback we get from our dealer partners is that the consumer, they're calling it future cost, right? So the consumer's saying, hey, that's a great price on the car, but what's it going to cost me after I buy it from you? Where'd you get it? Have you been hearing that too?
It's interesting. I think you might see that more on kind of as the wholesale and retail markets. There's some merging, some blurred lines there. So I mean, there are companies that have both wholesale channels and retail channels. Yeah. And I think consumers are going to get greater visibility into where a car came from, and how the dealer acquired it, and to be fair, I think that's probably important, because different types of used cars, whether it was in a rental program or whether it was a leased car, or that affects its history. That affects how it was used, and so I think that it's only fair for a consumer to have that information. And now there are tools and companies out there that dealers can use to provide that kind of information.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the inventory, right?
Yeah.
And everyone knows we've been battling inventory for a long time. But the overall amount of inventory is still the same. It's just a matter of who has it.
Right.
So when the consumer, one of the misnomers going around is the awareness of how much inventory is out there, because they're used to their dealer and not have as much as they would like or used to have. But if you go in any major metro and you go in a 50-mile radius, as a consumer on the three major sites, on average, there's 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 cars, right? So as a dealer, right, how do you make that car stand out, which is what they're trying to figure out, and what is the consumer interested in, right? So we know that millennials are now 70% of the buying public. We know that the COVID situation made consumers more concerned about and a little more tighter on their spend and all those things. So in your opinion, how do you see that? Is it going to lighten up like it's trending now? Is it going to get worse again? What do you like in the next? No one has a crystal ball, but everything you look at, is anything giving you a tale of what's down the road a little bit?
I mean, I think there, I feel like there will be a correction or just a rebound in supply.
Yeah.
Certainly, it seems that a lot of things go in 3-year cycles. So
sure.
We're at that 3-year point after COVID and started, and production shut down. So maybe this year and into next year, I think there will be a bounce back in supply as those cars that were finally made, after a chip shortage, after COVID, all production plant shuts down. Yep. After all that, as those cars, re-enter the used car cycle 3 years after they were made. I think you'll start to see that bounce back maybe next year or the year after. I was at a panel discussion yesterday, and just hearing them talk about the automotive industry is all about volatility.
Sure, right.
So there's really, like, who could have predicted COVID and its impact on the auto market? And we've seen this in waves. I've been doing this for 15, almost 16 years, and in that time we had. When I first started, there was 08, 09, there was the bankruptcies, cash for clunkers. You have the inventory impacts of those things 3 years later in 2011, 2012. And then, you have the Great Recession, you have the COVID, production shutdowns. These things come in waves, it feels like. And so, we don't necessarily know, what's around the corner, but I would think that we would start seeing improvements in supply. But I always tell people I think it's got to be one of the hardest jobs in automotive to do lease residual forecasting. Because you have to bet. I mean, we're here in Vegas. You have to bet on what something's going to be worth 3 years from now.
And they were wrong this time. Yeah, because they can predict it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a tough job to think what is the supply and price is going to look like 3 years from now.
Well, one thing that did happen is there was an 8 million reduction in new car production. Mm-hmm. Well, you got to be new before you can be used.
Right.
So to your point, in 3 years, that's going to, again, we're going to hit a little bit of a dip, right? You can't create those cars. They're not there. So just turning it a little bit, if we look at the automotive landscape today, right, you have some very large independents that are not franchise dealers. You have the Carvanas, the CarMaxes, the Vrooms of the world that rely on inventory that they have to acquire, right? And now the franchise dealers are kind of competing in that same space. Now we're going to take $8 million out of that, so that'll get interesting.
Yeah,
you agree? There's going to be some creativity for sure.
Absolutely, and it's I've seen, Carvana, for example, just started running those commercials last year or earlier this year about "We'll buy your car."
Yeah.
There was a commercial that said something along the lines of, "You came to Carvana to buy a car, now you can come to sell it." But it's one of those things that dealers and other forms of retailers are having to do now is tell consumers that you can sell your car to us too, even if you're not buying a new one. I mean, I think it's not a stretch to say that a lot of the everyday consumers that aren't in the auto industry don't know that you can go sell your car to a dealership without buying a new one. It's
right.
Not just a trade-in.
Yeah, it's different, right? It's a paradigm shift.
I think they're aware that you can do that at a CarMax, but at any dealership, I don't know that they're fully aware of that.
No, they're probably not. That takes time and culture to change that, right?
Absolutely.
So shifting gears a little bit, one of the reasons that we were excited to finally get you in studio is because you guys at Cherokee Media have Used Car Week, right? And a third of that is dedicated to certified pre-owned vehicles, right?
It is.
And we're kind of partnering a little bit, trying to work with you on that, right? Any teasers you can give people about what's coming up at Used Car Week? Anything you can throw out to the audience to give them a little taste?
So currently our call for speakers is open through July 7th, and we're getting a lot of good stuff in, and we really center it around the way kind of some inside baseball. Me and my colleagues build the agenda is through kind of centering it around panels.
Yeah.
And starting with those building blocks of general session panels where, we see, we kind of look at like what's hot in the used car market. What are the trends that people are talking about? And that's why it's valuable to come to conferences like this.
Yeah.
Because we can get a pulse of what is most concerning to dealers, or what will be, 5 months from now in November. And so, right now, thinking ahead, I mean, I think you're going to see a lot on, certified pre-owned, what are the advantages to automakers who have extended their eligibility out to 10 years or whatever it might be? How is having that greater pool, impacting sales? So far, it looks like it's boosting CPO sales. And does that, does it dilute the product at all? Does that, what are the challenges of that? So I think that's something we'll want to address with some CPO dealers and the manufacturers and other experts in the industry. And I think from the remarketing and wholesale side, we're going to be looking at auction consolidation. There's a lot of companies. I mean, just yesterday, America's Group, which it itself is a result of a consolidation of two independent auction groups, just bought DAA Las Vegas from the McConkey Group. And you're seeing a lot more moves like that with greater regularity. All of the M&A and buy sells that have been happening over the past 2 years on the dealership side, starting to see a lot more of that on the auction side as well. So I think that's something we'll definitely want to explore. It's going to be we talked about it a little bit at our Auto Intel Summit in Raleigh, North Carolina this spring, but when we have the full kind of auction industry crowd there, I think that's something I'm hoping to put together a panel on that as well.
Yeah. One of the things too that's affecting all that is based on the lack of inventory and trying to get dealers the ability to sell cars. Some of the manufacturers have gone to off-brand, providing a version of certified pre-owned for off-brand. So, that's still really 6 months full blast going, right? So it'll be interesting to get the feedback at that event. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to, is because no one really knows the cause and effect. It's just a plan at the moment, and they're executing on that plan. But you really don't know until you do it for 6 months or 8 months. So by the time Used Car Week comes around, that'll be an interesting topic. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I'd be curious to see, especially asking some of the OEMs who have done the extension to off brands or extended the mileage and eligibility. And then there's some that have chosen not to. So I'd be curious to find out from them why some did and why some haven't. Why do they want to keep it as is? Why do they want to expand it? So I think that if they're on the same panel, that could lead to a pretty lively chat, which would be great.
Yeah, that's always the case, right? A few jump in, and then some sit back and wait.
Yep.
It's harder to catch up if they're successful.
Yeah.
Right, but it's always that way, no matter what's new. Now, your company just did Canada, right? You did Used Car Week. How did that go?
It was great. So we were in Canada last week, and we set it up so it kind of now mirrors what we've done at the Used Car Week in the Southwest every year. But we start off with two days of retail, remarketing, auto finance content. Yeah. And then on the third day of the event, we have what we call it's Women in Automotive, which has been I think we said this year it's our 7th year of doing the conference. And it's turned out to be such a great forum. I think the people will come to the show just for that piece. They may not, even if they're not, there for the first 2 days of the conference, they'll come to that. And this year we had about 600 attendees, which was great for year two of not being coming out of COVID, and we didn't have it for 2 years, and to be able to have that kind of crowd, and 200 of them were dealers. Yeah. And it's a lot of people who Toronto dealers that live there. They're able to take a few hours out of their showroom and come learn. And the crowd there, it's interesting because it really is, people are there to be in the sessions. It's at some conventions, and including others that we do, there's so much going on. There's some people are in what we call ICWs, which are in conjunction with meetings with, they've got a group of dealers, they got a group of auctions, they got to meet with the manufacturer, and they're at a conference to do a lot of things in addition to going to sessions. But what we found with Canada is that crowd there is really there to be in all of the sessions. So I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see every single general session, every single workshop was packed. And it's a good sign to see that people are hungry for this kind of information.
Our company happens to have a division up in Canada, and they're hungry. Those dealers are just hungry for, in their words, they say that the U.S. has always been 2 or 3 years ahead, and so they're trying to catch up, right? Oh, what's working? What are you guys seeing? What are you doing? So it's exciting. I've been up there myself working on some training with the manufacturers up there with their employees and stuff, and just a month and a half ago. So it was exciting to be up there. They are definitely enthusiastic about help and wanting help and looking for help. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, one of the things we shifted about Canada in recent years is we used to have our Canadian event in March and April. And, excuse me. Then we had a Raleigh event in North Carolina in July, and we're like, maybe we should flip flop those and go to Toronto when it's 70 degrees outside, and Raleigh when it's not 95 and muggy. So we now have our Auto Intel Summit every year in April, and then the Canada's Used Car Week, usually late spring, early summer.
To keep these timely, as we always promise we will, I want to just give you the last couple of minutes. If you want to maybe tell the audience about the upcoming Used Car Week, the dates, where it's located, that kind of stuff, and maybe tell them a little bit about Cherokee Media if you like, or in fact, Automotive Remarketing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Take the next couple of minutes, let them know.
Our Used Car Week is going to be November 6th through 9th in Scottsdale, Arizona. We're going to a place called the Kierland. It's a Westin property, and it's a gorgeous hotel. It's great property. I will have to warn folks, there are rattlesnakes there that are they're enclosed, they're in a cage. You're not going to get hurt, but it is, if you're jumpy like me when it comes to snakes, just be aware of that. But yes, that all jokes aside, it is November 6th through 9th, and really the way we'd set it up is that our motto is in print, online, in person.
Yeah.
So you have our news magazine, you have our online podcast, our digital editions, our webinars, and then in person at the conferences. So it's the content, it's being able to access the information and content in various forms. And, it's a very holistic approach, both in format, but also in looking at the overall used car ecosystem. So the week is set up where we have a first block and a second block. First block is the what we call the pre-owned conference, the Repo Con, which looks at the repossession and recovery space, and the Auto Fin Con, which looks at the auto finance. And we find that within that first block, a lot of people will, mix and match which sessions they go to. So somebody who is, they might be a dealer, but they want to learn a little bit more about the auto finance space. Sure. And then they want to go to a retail workshop. And so we set that up for Monday, Tuesday, and first half of Wednesday of that week. And then the second block is always been traditionally home to our National Remarketing Conference. And that's our kind of flagship signature event that we've been doing for 20-some years now, I think. And that focuses on the auto auction community, the remarketing, the consigners, the online a lot of, as wholesale goes digital, a lot of the digital platforms are there and take a big part of it. And we added a conference 2 years ago called the Navicon. We work with Steve Greenfield at Automotive Ventures, and we added so Navicon stands for the National Automotive Venture and Investors Conference.
Oh, okay.
So it's all of the there's a lot of startups that kind of go and there's a Navicon Cup where it's almost like a competition between the startups and there's judges and voting and all of that. Oh,
very cool.
But it's it really explores just the money behind all this tech and innovation. How is it being funded? So we get a lot of venture capitalists there. We get a lot of investor types, CEOs. and it's a 1-day event that we do on the Thursday of Used Car Week. And Steve Greenfield MCs that for us. He's done that the past 2 years, and there's a lot of panels, and he'll have one-on-one chats. Last year he had a one-on-one with Ernie Garcia of Carvana. And he had I believe Scott Painter was he had a one-on-one with Scott Painter, who's founded a lot of the companies in the tech space, and so we have that going on at the same time as our National Remarketing Conference.
Okay.
And same as the first block, there's a lot of overlap, a lot of people going, to both sessions. And really the way we look at things at Cherokee Media Group really is looking at the used car market as one large ecosystem with a lot of moving parts, but they're all kind of related.
Sure.
And so we try to bring those people together, and, a big part of those conferences are just getting people to meet that are in different sides of the used car business. But
talking.
Get them talking, get them
makes
working
a lot of
together.
sense.
So.
Well, we got to wrap it up. We hope you have enjoyed this session. Joe, always, sir.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure. I'm glad we
finally
got it to happen. Looking forward to Used Car Week. Of course, we always partner with you guys in that and participate in that. We're looking forward to that one. So thank you for attending, and we'll see you on the next Just the Facts.